working to connect a region of over 600 million bridges between our lands.
Welcome to an hour program of news where we can hear ASEAN news and beyond. This is Faye Barta from your EBC Thailand Bureau, and here are the headlines. Tonight, the death of Queen Elizabeth II through historic 70 years on the British throne. Her eldest son, Charles, now officially King Charles III, immediately ascending to the throne after a lifetime preparing for this moment. And reactions pouring in from across the world. Secretary General Antonio Guterres calling her a reassuring presence throughout decades of sweeping change, including the decolonization of Africa and Asia and the evolution of the Commonwealth. And the Philippine Airlines, or PAL, confirmed that one of its passengers aboard the flight to Hong Kong, a flight tested positive for monkeypox. And among the spinach crops of a rural Cambodian school garden, children test their math skills while weighing produce. But as food prices rise, the vegetable patch has become a safety net for struggling families. And first in our news, Queen Elizabeth II of Britain, who died Thursday at the age of 96, was a widely respected global figure, including here in Asia. According to the Banner News, the record of her meetings with Asian leaders reads like a who's who of the region's modern history since World War II. And Emperor Hirohito of Japan, Indonesia's Suharto, King Bhumibol Adulyadej of Thailand, Singapore's Lee Kuan Yew, and China's Xi Jinping are just a few of the national leaders she visited in Asia or hosted at Buckingham Palace. As British monarch, Queen Elizabeth served as head of the Commonwealth of former British colonies and visited many of those countries multiple times. The Asian members she visited, including Bangladesh, which she visited in 1983, Malaysia, Singapore, and Brunei, which she first visited in 1972, India and Pakistan, which she first visited in 1961, the Maldives and Sri Lanka, which she visited in 1954, just 2 years after she took the throne on the death of her father, George VI. She also frequently traveled to far-flung Pacific Island nations that are in the Commonwealth, such as Fiji, Nauru, Papua New Guinea, the Solomon Islands, Kiribati, and Samoa. Additionally, she was hosted in Nepal, Thailand, Indonesia, Japan, China, and even South Korea. Her 1986 six-day visit to China was the first ever by a British monarch to the country. She visited the Forbidden City in Beijing and the Great Wall, and reaffirming the British commitment to return Hong Kong to China. And the commitment was fulfilled in July 1997 when Hong Kong transferred from British rule back to Beijing. This is a significant geopolitical development that was seen as a final death knell of the British Empire. And Queen Elizabeth's last visit to Asia was in 2006, when she was hosted by President S.R. Nathan in Singapore as head of the British Commonwealth. And their ancestors were royal friends by correspondence. But Britain's Queen Elizabeth II and Thailand's King Bhumibol developed a face-to-face bond during their lifetimes. The late King Bhumibol Adulyadej, also known as Rama IX, was the second longest reigning monarch in world history until his death in 2016 at age 88, serving on the throne for 7 decades and 126 days. It was a record the late Queen Elizabeth surpassed in June before she died aged 96 on Thursday at her Scottish Highland retreat. The Thai king had a head start, beginning his reign in 1946, while the British queen ascended the throne 6 years later. But neither reached the late French King Louis' record 72 years and 110 days, which ended in 1715. The pair forged a friendship over the decades, smiling warmly and chatting merrily, and they interacted and welcomed each other on state visits, according to archival footage. And Britain was the first stop on the Western educated King Rama VI or Rama the Ninth 6-month European tour in 1916. Her second trip to the Thai kingdom coincided with the year of King Bhumibol's Golden Jubilee. And UK Prime Minister Liz Truss calls for the British people to support King Charles III as he takes on the awesome responsibility of monarchy following the death of his mother, Queen Elizabeth II. Let's take a look.
Today, the crown passes, as it has done for more than 1,000 years, to our new monarch, our new head of state, His Majesty, King Charles III. With the King's family, we mourn the loss of his mother, and as we mourn, we must come together as a people to support him, to help him bear the awesome responsibility that he now carries for us all. We offer him our loyalty and devotion, just as his mother devoted so much to so many for so long. And with the passing of the second Elizabethan age, we usher in a new era in the magnificent history of our great country, exactly as Her Majesty would have wished, by saying the words, "God save the King."
Britons were jolted into recognizing the beginning of the end of her reign when in April 2021, she lost her beloved husband of 73 years, Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh. Yet the palace had long recognized her mortality, and the transition to Charles was already well underway. And the eldest of her 4 children, Charles, Prince, and Wales, who at 73 was the oldest heir apparent in British history, became king immediately. He and his eldest son, Prince William, who now becomes heir, and his wife, Catherine, began to assume more of the Queen's official roles. And New Zealand's Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern on Friday paid tribute to the extraordinary life of the country's late monarch, Queen Elizabeth II. Once again, let's take a look.
This is a time of deep sadness. Young or old, there is no doubt that a chapter is closing today. And with that, we share our thanks for an incredible woman who we were lucky enough to call our Queen. She has come to define notions of service, charity, and consistency. Her commitment to her role and to all of us has been without question and unwavering. She has also demonstrated courage, compassion, and humour. A strong memory I will have of her is her laughter. She was extraordinary. To honour the passing of the Queen of New Zealand and realm countries, we move into a period of official mourning. Flags will be flown at half-mast. Preparations begin for a state memorial service to be held after the official funeral is held in the United Kingdom.
And across the Pacific in Canada, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said the Queen would forever remain an important part of his country's history, but also offered personal stories that move beyond stuffy-sounding declarations. Once again, take a look.
In a complicated world, her steady grace and resolve brought comfort and strength to us all. Canada is in mourning. She was one of my favorite people in the world, and I will miss her so. As her 12th Canadian Prime Minister, I'm having trouble believing that my last sit-down with her was my last. I will so miss those chats. She was thoughtful, wise, curious, helpful, funny, and so much more.
And Prime Minister Trudeau first met the Queen when he was a boy, and his father, Pierre Trudeau, was Prime Minister in the 1970s. Queen Elizabeth had visited Canada a total of 22 times, more than any other country. During her last visit in June 2020, the monarch told the crowd gathered in Halifax on Canada's Atlantic coast, "It's very good to be home." And Trudeau earlier said in a statement, "The Queen was a constant presence in our lives, and her service to Canadians will forever remain an important part of our country's history." And even in places where the legacy of colonialism is still raw, leaders focus on the attributes of the woman rather than the baggage of her role. Let's listen.
Felt so sad when I heard about her passing, but I also celebrate her life as a symbol of leadership, symbol of peace. And I remember that she gave us our independence and the platter of gold, and that I'm grateful about. And of course, I ask her soul rest in perfect peace.
We look forward with pleasure to seeing more of your country during our stay here, and more of your people, some of whom formed such a memorable contingent at my coronation.
Nigeria was ruled by the British Empire from the mid-19th century until 1960. And the president of Zimbabwe, which withdrew from the Commonwealth in 2003 after its suspension over human rights concerns and endured decades of frosty relations with its former colonial ruler, offered his own sympathies to the British public. May she rest in peace. This was written by the President Emerson Mnangagwa. Russian President Vladimir Putin on a Thursday offered his condolences to King Charles III following the death of Queen Elizabeth II, wishing the new monarch courage and resilience after his mother's passing. And the most important events of the United Kingdom's recent history are inextricably bound with the name of Her Majesty. For many decades, Elizabeth II rightfully enjoyed her subjects' love and respect, as well as authority on the world stage. This was according to Vladimir Putin and according to Kremlin statement. In a telegram to King Charles III, Putin said the Queen had rightfully enjoyed the love of her subjects. "I wish you courage and perseverance in the face of this heavy, irreparable loss," and this was he wrote. The message comes despite Britain's royal family expressing support for Ukraine, which Russia invaded in February. Vladimir Putin is also overwhelming and popular in the United Kingdom. A March survey by YouVote found that 88% of Britons hold an unfavorable opinion of the Russian president. According to a Business Insider report, Putin and Queen Elizabeth met in 2003 when the Russian president was on a state visit in Britain. And according to former UK Home Secretary David Blunkett, she was not pleased when Putin showed up 40 minutes late in their meeting. And Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky said that it was with deep sadness that he had learned of the death of the Queen Elizabeth II. Take a look.
З глибоким сумом дізнався про смерть її величності королеви Єлизавети II. Важка втрата для усієї Європи і для світу. Від імені усього українського народу висловлюю співчуття королівській родині, усій Великій Британії та країнам співдружності націй. Наші думки і молитви з вами.
She's not in the habit of driving round the streets in full robes and a tiara, least of all Mauritius Parliament. The government, sparing no expense, had hacked the top off a very expensive British motor car. This is at present under a state of emergency, following a number of recent strikes, and that the leaders of one opposition party have all been stuck in jail for at least the duration of the...
Secretary General Antonio Guterres expressed his deep sadness at the passing of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, the Queen of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. And in a statement issued today, or that was yesterday, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres paid tribute to Queen Elizabeth II, saying she was a reassuring presence throughout decades of sweeping change, including the decolonization of Africa and Asia and the evolution of the Commonwealth. Here, Queen Elizabeth during her first trip to New York. Take a look.
We are still far from the achievement of the ideals which I have mentioned, but we must not be discouraged. The peoples of the world expect the United Nations to persevere in its efforts.
For over 6 decades, the United Nations has helped to shape the international response to global dangers. The challenge now is to continue to show this clear and convening leadership while not losing sight of your ongoing work to secure the security, prosperity, and dignity of our fellow human beings. When people in 53 years from now look back on us, they will doubtless view many of our practices as old-fashioned. But it is my hope that when judged by future generations, our sincerity, our willingness to take a lead, and our determination to do the right thing will stand the test of time. In tomorrow's world, we must all work together as hard as ever if we are truly to be United Nations.
Her first trip to New York took place in 1957, 5 years into her reign as the head of the Commonwealth and Queen Regnant of 7 independent Commonwealth countries: the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Pakistan, and Ceylon. Guterres said Queen Elizabeth II was a good friend of the United Nations, recalling that she had visited New York headquarters twice, more than 50 years apart. Queen Elizabeth II ascended to the throne following the death of her father, King George VI, on February 6, 1952, at just 25 years of age. She was crowned in June the following year. And in February, the UK kicked off a series of celebrations for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, marking 70 years of her service to the British Commonwealth. Throughout her tenure, the monarch served as a living link to World War II or World War II Britain, and proceeded over a post-colonial era adjustment and saw the country through what some called a bitter divorce from the European Union during Brexit. And in other news, the Philippine Airlines, or PAL, confirmed that one of its passengers aboard a flight to Hong Kong flight tested positive for monkeypox. And in a statement from PAL, spokesperson Chelo Villaluna said the passenger was on board PAL flight PR300 from Manila to Hong Kong on September 5. Villaluna said they have already communicated with the Department of Health as well as with the health authorities in Hong Kong. She added that they are also notifying the passengers on the flight who were in close proximity to the affected traveler. There are a total of 4 confirmed monkeypox cases now in the country. And President Bongbong Marcos Jr. on Thursday met with the officials of the Department of Health, or the DOH, and the Department of the Interior and Local Government, DILG, to assess the current coronavirus disease 2019, or the COVID-19 situation in the Philippines. Marcos convened the meeting at Malacañang Palace in Manila following the recommendation of the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases to allow the optional wearing of face masks outdoors. And the OP, however, did not mention any decision made by Marcos with regard to the AITF recommendations. And it nevertheless noted that Marcos sees as a positive development of the continued drop in COVID-19 infections amid his administration's efforts to ramp up the nationwide vaccination drive. And the DOH officer in charge, Maria Rosario Vergere, backed the proposed optional wearing of face masks, but urged the public, especially the vulnerable persons, to continue wearing one. Marcos' approval is needed before the AITF EID's recommendation becomes a policy. And Press Secretary Trixie Cruz Angeles reminded the public that the use of face masks remains mandatory unless Marcos approves the proposal to make it voluntary. Staying in the Philippines, President Marcos Jr. attended the inauguration of the Union Bank Innovation Campus in San Pedro City, Laguna. There he emphasized the importance of adapting to new technologies to help the Philippines overcome impact of pandemic and hasten recovery. Take a look.
If there was one silver lining amidst the dark clouds brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic, I suppose it could be said it is the hastening of the adoption of technological innovations in this digital and modern age. The trend was very pronounced before the pandemic, and it was accelerated by need because of the pandemic. And now, many people have discovered that this is an actual viable way to do business. We in government have gone a step further than that. Not only is it a viable way of doing business, it is the only way that we will be doing business in the years to come. And therefore, we cannot allow the Philippines to get left behind. And so the initiatives that we have, such as Union Bank is doing with this campus that we have just inaugurated today, that we have just opened today, are precisely the kind of innovations, the kind of forward-thinking operations and actions that we will need, not only in the private sector, but also in the public sector, so that we in government can be participants in the new digital world wherein we are living in more and more in our day-to-day lives. And despite the lockdown and the distance between us, we learned to hold meetings, even court trials, online. To sustain growth and promote new advances in this sector, it's my hope that you will explore the limitless possibilities and take advantage of the many bright ideas that our experts have so that we can generate more jobs and secure our nation's economic revitalization. Be able to take advantages of the efficiencies that digital banking, digital transactions, the digital way of doing business it affords us. And we would be bereft, we would be neglectful of our duties if we do not recognize the trend that is happening around the world and not only adjust to it, but position ourselves to take full advantage of it. This initiative perfectly fits into the three-year digital payments transformation roadmap of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, which promotes digitalization of payments towards furthering financial inclusion. But ordinary citizens who generally are not included in the digital world as of now to now be included and to take advantage of all the conveniences, all of the efficiencies, and all of the new products that will come out of these new technologies. In our shared success to make the disbursement of social benefits and other assistances to the public smoother, I look forward to the next milestone in our collaborations, which is ensuring financial inclusion through digital technology. This will provide effective access to a wider range of financial services for all Filipinos, especially the vulnerable sectors.
And finally, in our news, among the spinach crops at the rural Cambodian school garden, children test their math skills while weighing produce. But as food prices rise, the vegetable patch has become a safety net for struggling families. Take a look.
Trong ភូមិយើងខ្ញុំនេះភាគច្រើនគឺភាសាក្រៃក្រច្រើនដែរដល់ពេលបានកម្មវិធីនេះមកអាចធ្វើឲ្យគិតបានទទួលអាហាររូបត្ថម្ភគ្រប់គ្រាន់ហើយធ្វើឲ្យគិតបានមករៀនបានទៀងទាត់ហើយនឹងជាពិសេសគឺការបោះបង់នេះមានការកាត់បន្ថយច្រើននេះក៏ពុំដែរดีใช่กับรวยเยอะเอาอย่างเก็บเมื่อหน้าเด็กกูดูเปลี่ยนบ้านខ្ញុំរៀនបានក្នុងសួនសិក្សាខ្ញុំចេះអំពីការវាស់ប្រវែងនិងការដាំដុះទាក់ទងនឹងមេរៀនក្នុងថ្នាក់រៀនសួនសិក្សាមានការសប្បាយផងនិងចេះផង
And before we go, we would like to mention also the people here in Thailand to take care and stay safe as always, especially here in Pathum Thani province, in Rangsit city, where the flood is really terrible and it's really high flood. Please do take care and always keep safe. And that's the latest news around Southeast Asian nations. Thank you for watching ASEAN in Focus. Stay updated. Once again, this is Faye Barta from your EBC Thailand Bureau. Thank you for watching news in extraordinary times.